Hello, my friends. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. And I hope that you are doing well and fine. This is your professor, Dr. Herbert B. Rosana. And today I will be presenting to you a lecture on conflict analysis. So please take note of the things that we are discussing here because this will have something to do with the major project that I am asking you to do. So some of the principles and outlines are contained in this lecture, and I will be discussing to you the different role of the different not role but the different tools that can be used in conflict analysis. And we should be able to use this tool. We should be able to understand the uses of this tool so that we will also be able to apply this in the case study that I have assigned you to do. So it's important that we learn the tool of conflict analysis. This involves not only our mental prowess, but this also involves our ability to make use of existing tools in order to analyze a particular conflict. I would like to also to remind you that the conflict analysis tools are not research tools. They are simply tools that helps you to gauge or to give you a benchmark of the way you are going to deal or analyze a particular problem. So, kumbaga, hindi ito, this is not a rigid tool, but rather this is just a tool to be able to help us determine and to make decisions, sound decisions in a particular conflict. So parang ano ito, like for example, pag gumagamit ka ng mga digital na mga halimbawa yung pag-measure ng blood pressure. Usually ang ibang mga tools na ito, hindi naman talaga sila accurate na nakapagbibigay sa iyo ng accurate measure of your blood pressure. But this gives you some sort of an approximation that will help you to gain an idea the level where you are. So in the same way, itong tinatawag natin na conflict analysis tools ay ginagamit din ito para malaman natin ang sitwasyon. Okay, so that we will be able to come up with a situation with a decision, because remember that conflict is dynamic. It has its own life, it has its own processes. It can linger on, but it can change and mutate in a way that we don't expect. That's why we should always be alert and flexible in our analysis of a particular conflict. Now, here are some of the basic assumptions that we need to understand. First is conflict is best understood as incompatibility of goals between two individuals or groups of individuals, whereby one actor causes the damage and the other experience the losses and damage. So this will be our basic assumption, because there are many definitions of conflict. Some of them are highly theoretical, but we will stick to this parameter. So it is best understood as an incompatibility of goals between two individuals or groups of individuals, whereby one actor causes the damage and the other experience the losses. So another is conflict analysis can be of help in guiding future actions. So this is premised on the idea that conflict is dynamic. So remember that conflict can change over time. It can change overnight without us expecting it. So we have to be dynamic, and we have to be alert. So another is conflict analysis can be used individually or as a group. So the analysis does not lead to an objective understanding of the conflict. Rather, it makes one's subjective perception transparent. This way, they can be reflected on and clearer communicated. So these are some of the basic assumptions that we need to pay attention to. So, conflict analysis can entail the following. Number one, verifying if one is dealing with a conflict. So, in conflict analysis, you should be able to really ascertain that you are dealing with a conflict, not a pseudo conflict or not something which is not really a conflict. Then number two, determining the conflict system's boundaries. So we have to understand the boundaries of the conflict. What kind of conflict is that? So for example, is it a conflict of economic interest? Is it a conflict of political interest? Or is it a conflict on a personal level, making use of official channels, etc.? Then third is using conflict analysis tools to focus on certain aspects of the conflict and organize information. So conflict analysis tools can also be used in order to analyze the data that we have obtained, because we have to be very efficient in classifying our data, because these data are the one that will guide us into making recommendations or into making decisions if you are in the position of the decision maker. But if you are not the decision maker, perhaps you are the mediator, or perhaps you are a somebody who is tasked to do a particular thing. Then when you have an data, and you have an data which is properly organized, then it will be easy to make recommendations and to give directions to that particular conflict. So my dear friends, these are the following theories, different types or theories of conflict analysis. We have the Harvard approach, then we have the human needs theory, and we have the conflict transformation theory. So in the process of our lecture today, we are going to discuss all of this one by one. Now, here are the 7 conflict analysis tools. First, number 1, you have the conflict wheel. We have number 2, the conflict tree. Then third, we have the conflict mapping. Then 4, we have the Glassell's escalation model. Then number 5, we have the Enmedios conflict perspective analysis. Then number 6, we have the needs fears mapping. And 7, the multi-causal role model. So these are the 7 conflict analysis tools. Kumbaga sa karpentero, this is our chest box that contains the different tools that we need. Like for example, we have the hammer, we have the saw, we have the screwdriver, etc., etc., etc. So these are the different tools that we can use in a particular situation, in a particular need. Yan. So, halimbawa, for example, yung illustration natin sa karpentero, kung ang kailangan mo ay pagpuputol ng kahoy, syempre ang kailangan gamitin mo ay lagari. So, hahanapin mo yung lagari. So, hindi mo siya gagamitan ng martilyo. So, kung halimbawa naman you need to attach two things together, then ang kailangan mo diyan ay pako at saka glue. So, you're not going to use the screwdriver. So, in other words, just like as the carpenter know what to use in times of a particular specific need, then tayo naman kailangan maging specific din tayo. Alam din natin kung alin sa mga conflict analysis tools na ito ang pwede nating gamitin sa isang particular na sitwasyon. So, let us now examine the different conflict analysis tools, and let's begin with the conflict wheel. So from the slide, you can see the wheel. So the wheel is turning clockwise, and there are different steps. The first step starts with actors relations. Then number 2, the issues. Number 3, dynamics. 4, content structure. 5, causation. And 6, options and strategy. So itong number 1, alamin natin who are these actors in that particular conflict? Who are the primary actors, secondary actors, tertiary actors, and what are their relations to each other? How are they related to each other? What is their dealing with each other? Then number 2, we will also examine the different issues that they are bringing in relation to their contentions. Then third, we have to learn also understand the dynamics of the conflict. And number 4, we have to understand the contextual structure, meaning to say, what is the locale of the conflict? What is the ecosystem of the conflict? So we have to understand all of this. Then number 5, what are those factors that causes this conflict? What are the triggers? So the causes, the triggers. And number 6, after the analysis, we should be able to identify certain options and strategies in order to find a solution to the conflict. So the conflict wheel is a meta-conflict analysis tools including the other tools. Kaya tinawag natin siyang meta sapagkat malawak ang saklaw niya. Ibig sabihin, parang umbrella siya, pangkalahatan. So it's like a comprehensive tool that includes also the other tools, that the other tools are subsumed into this meta wheel. So meta conflict analysis tool. So each of the 6 sections of the wheel can be further analyzed using the tools presented. So ibig sabihin, yung kada step doon sa wheel na yon ay gagamitan natin ng iba-ibang uri ng conflict analysis tools. It can be dealt with separately and it can be dealt with in a more focused way. So the wheel also symbolizes the wholeness and movement. So parang mayroon siyang theoretical underpinning. So nais nating makita na dapat unawain natin na ang conflict ay isang buong bagay. Hindi ito isolated na mga bagay, kundi ito ay part ng isang mas malaking bahagi. So once the various aspects have been examined, they need to be brought together again to get the conflict analysis rolling again. So that is the concept of the conflict analysis wheel. Yan ang ibig sabihin ng wheel na yon. Okay. Now, what is the aim of the wheel? Okay. The aim of the conflict wheel is to organize the other conflict analysis tools, and second, to serve as overview when first approaching a particular conflict. So let us go to the first part of the wheel. The first part of the wheel, which is the actors, relations, or parties. These are people, organizations or countries involved in a conflict. So titingnan natin siya from that perspective. It could be people, or it could be organization, or it could be countries involved in a particular conflict. If directly involved, they are called conflict parties. If they are involved transforming the parties, they are called third parties. So stakeholders have an interest in the conflict or its outcome, but they are not directly involved. Conflicts by definition refer to frictional relationship between parties. So tandaan natin na ang isang conflict ay may iba-iba siyang layer. Meron tayong tinatawag na primary parties, secondary parties, and tertiary parties. Yung tertiary parties, sila yung tinatawag natin na mga stakeholders. Although hindi sila kasali doon sa conflict, but they stand to benefit from the outcome of the conflict. Yung mga secondary parties naman, hindi sila directly part ng conflict, pero may part din sila. Kaya lang, ang kanilang role is to transform, or ang role nila is to influence the parties in conflict. At yung mga parties in conflict, sila yung primary, sila yung ibig sabihin, sila yung primary, sila yung may stake doon, sila talaga yung may conflict, may hindi pagkakaunawaan o kaya pag-aaway. Yan, so tandaan natin ang mga relationship ng mga taong ito. In fact, later on, paggawa natin ng conflict mapping, kailangan natin ma-determine ang pagki-criss-cross ng mga relationship ng mga parties na ito. That's why kailangan magkaroon tayo ng conceptual map, maitala natin itong mga taong ito, mga grupo, mga leader, mga communities or countries, and then let us try to determine how related are they to each other. Parang sa social media yan, may mga BFF, may mga friends of friends, ganyan. So we have to be able to determine, because by determining this, we will be able to understand the conflict and understand its ecology, and also the power sharing and the power relationship among these particular parties in conflict. Now, another is, let's go back to this one. We have the number 2 is issues are the topics of the conflict, what people discuss or fight about. Then we have the dynamics. Dynamics refer to the escalation level of the conflict, the intensity of interaction, the temperament and the energy of a conflict that transform people. So pag sinabi nating dynamic, ito yung level ng escalation ng conflict. Ibig sabihin, ibig sabihin, sumisidhi ba ang conflict na yon? Then, tinitingnan natin yung temperament, nagiging mainit ba ang kanilang bakbakan o lumalamig, then etc. Then context structures, the conflict context and structural factors are often outside the conflict system one is looking at. Structural violence refers to violence that is not directly caused by people but by the economic and political systems in place, example, those that are causing poverty. Then another is causation. Conflicts are never too monocasual but multi-casual, and systematic factors interact. Instead of saying that everything is related to everything, it is helpful to differentiate between different causes or influential factor. Kasi minsan ang conflict ay malawak siya, complicated siya. So hindi pwedeng sabihin natin na ito lang ang cause ng conflict na yan. Meron pang ibang mga bagay-bagay na nagko-contribute sa paglago ng conflict na yan. Then also, lastly, the options and strategies. This point examines ways to deal with a conflict, strategies that are used or could be used, and conflict party or third-party efforts to de-escalate the conflict. So these are the contents of the conflict wheel. So we have to be able to step by step and know how to do this, and then maybe later on when we are already skillful, we'll be able to apply this kind of situation. Okay, let's go to the next tool. That is the conflict tree. So the conflict tree is a visualizing and sorting tool. It seeks to visualize the root, the manifest issues, dynamic factors. So you have the structure, manifest, dynamic factors. So, pag sinabi nating structural, it refers to the root. Ano ang pinag-uugatan ng conflict na yan? Then, yung manifest naman, ano yung mga issues na kanilang nilalahad na in relation to those conflict? And itong dynamic factors, ito yung mga escalation, changes, temperature ng conflict. So, kailan natin pwedeng gamitin ang conflict tree? So, these are the aims of the conflict tree. So, one is to initiate reflections on the links between the root causes, the issues, and the dynamic factors. Tandaan natin na it's like an onion. So, there are different layers in a conflict. So, kung gagamitin natin yung illustration ng kahoy, yung kahoy ay mayroong ugat, mayroon siyang trunk, at meron siyang mga sanga na may mga dahon. So kumbaga kailangan maintindihan natin yung ugat, saan ba ito nagmumula, at yung trunk, yung mga pinaninindigan nilang mga issues nila. And then later on, yung mga dahon naman, yung mga issues and dynamics, kasi mang-iba-iba yan. So in other words, we should be able to understand when we are able to identify the root, the trunks, and the trees, then we are able to identify the connections of all of this. How are these connected? Because sometimes there are conflicts that are intractable because nga of the lapse of time. May mga conflict, lalo na sa mga away ng pamilya, o kaya for example yung mga away between countries na sometimes have already spanned for several centuries. Mahirap talagang matrace ang kanilang mga tunay na mga pinagmulan, pero pag naunawaan natin kung paano ito nagtutugma-tugma, then we begin to have an idea what it is. Okay. Then the second reason for using the conflict tree is to differentiate the time horizons of various conflict transformation approaches. So kailangan din maintindihan natin yung mga approaches natin, at ano ba yung mga lapse ng time, at ano ba yung mga time na nire-require. So yan ang purpose or aim of using the conflict tree. Now, here are the steps in the conduct of the conflict tree. Paano ko gagamitin ang conflict tree as a tool in conflict analysis? Number one is first, draw a picture of a tree including its root, trunk, and branches on a large sheet of paper or a flip chart. So ito ay pwedeng gamitin halimbawa kung kayo ay you are doing this as a group. Yan, as a group, then you can get a manila paper or a flip chart or a bigger paper. Then first draw a huge tree with the roots, with the trunk, and with the leaves. Then each person gets several index cards on which they write a word or two or draw a symbol of a picture indicating important factors of the conflict as they see it. So, imbitahan mo ang mga ka-group members mo na magsulat doon sa mga index card o kaya anumang card yon o kaya pwede rin mag-color coding at ilagay doon yung mga kanilang mga factors na nakikita sa conflict na yon. Okay. Then after that, invite the people to attach their cards to the tree on the roots if they see it as a root cause, or on the trunk if they think it is a manifest issue, a topic of the conflict on the branches if they see it as dynamic factors influencing the conflict. So, halimbawa may isang conflict situation, pasulatin mo sila doon sa mga index card na yon. Ano ba ang nakikita nila sa conflict na yon? Then afterwards, help them to analyze, help them to identify ano ba yung nasulat nila, ano ba yung nakita nila. Ito ba ang root cause? Ito ba ang mga issue? Or ito ba yung mga dynamics associated with the conflict? And let them attach it to the tree that you have drawn. Okay. So the facilitator of course will be the one to facilitate, at dapat ang facilitator must be dynamic and must be knowledgeable and must be proactive para makita niya yung ma-analyze niya kaagad yung mga inputs ng mga group members. Okay. Ang pang-apat is someone facilitates the discussion on where the factors are placed on the tree. So there is no absolute right or wrong. Placement of factors is partly subjective and may be different in different conflicts and may change over time. Nevertheless, try as a group to create a common snapshot of the conflict as the group sees it. Then people can visualize their own conflict transformation efforts. Example, like as a bird or a worm, and place this on the tree in relation to the factors they are currently working on. So let them imagine, ano ba sila? Sila ba ay bird? Sila ba ay worm? And how are they going to attack this issue? And let them identify their place in the tree. Then number 6, discuss the links between the root causes and dynamic factors and how to address this. So ito na, sa number 6, diyan na kayo magsisimula na kayo mag-discuss at maghanap ng solusyon doon sa problema. Kasi nga, kung sa pag-analyze na yon, makikita mo na yung connection ng mga bagay-bagay, makikita mo na yung ecology ng conflict, and then, from that perspective, kailangan magbigay na kayo ng mga analysis ninyo. Okay. So, here is an example of a conflict tree. Halimbawa, the core problem. Ang pinoproblema nila ay halimbawa, ito pinoproblema nila yung encroachment into protected area. Parang pag-aaway ito sa mga lupa. Yan. Ano ang causes ng pag-aaway? Na-identify ng mga participants. Sabi nila, weak PA law enforcement, disputed land ownership, incompatible land uses, poor remuneration of PA staff, then displacement of groups associated outside the PA, then ethnicity and rivalry, insufficient natural, etc. Ito yung mga root causes. Yung mga dynamics naman nila ay ito, the loss of PA revenue, polarization of ethnic group, community tensions, human-wildlife conflict, loss of biodiversity. Then ito yung pinaka-core problem na nakita nila, encroachment into protective area or ito yung kanilang pina-prioritize na conflict. Okay. So this is an example of a conflict tree. Once you have identified, you have drawn this, then you'll be able to describe and find solution or maybe recommend solutions to the problem, how to deal with the problem so that the nasty effects of this problem will be reduced, and at the same time an open way or gateway can be found to solve this particular problem. The third is conflict mapping. So, alam natin kung anong mapa. So, this is conflict mapping. similar to a geographic map that simplifies terrain so that it can be summarized on one page. So a conflict map simplifies a conflict, and it serves to visualize the actors and their power or their influence on the conflict, their relationship with each other, and the conflict theme issues. And then a conflict map represents a specific view of the person or group mapping of a specific conflict situation. It should not be too complex and at a specific moment in time, similar to a photograph. So the aim of this tool is, one, to clarify the relationship between actors, to visualize and reflect on the power of the various actors, and to represent the conflict on one sheet of paper to give the first conflict overview. So napaka-importante po nitong mga factors na ito na malaman natin. So kumbaga kailangan maging marites tayo kung tayo ay mga conflict resolvers, okay, mediators. First, to clarify the relationship between the actors. We have to be very clarified kasi minsan may mga magkaaway na kahit magkaaway sila pero meron silang relasyon. We have to be able to determine that. Minsan nagkakampi-kampi sila pero minsan yung kakampi mo ay kakampi rin ng isa. So we need to understand all of this. These things need to be clarified. Hindi naman kailangan baguhin natin itong sitwasyon na ito pero kailangan maintindihan natin para at the same time maintindihan natin din yung power dynamics na namumuo sa kanila. So to visualize and reflect on the power of various actors. Pag sinabi nating power, ibig sabihin, ano ang pwede nilang gawin? What kind of things can they inflict on their enemies? What kind of things can they do? Will they be able to alter the situation? Will they be able to change the mindset of people, etc.? And then, the purpose of conflict map is to put it on one piece of paper, one visual panorama na makikita natin yung mga relationship ng mga people or organizations or countries in conflict. So siguro magtatanong na kayo, paano gagawin ang tinatawag na conflict map na to? So paano ito gagawin? So here are the step-by-step process. Number 1, decide on the conflict you want to analyze and set the conflict system boundaries. So kailangan maghanap ka ng conflict tapos decide the parameters. Ano ba ang pwede mong pag-aralan diyan, ano ang hindi pwede at hanggang saan ka lang. Then number 2, form groups of 2 or more people. One can make a conflict map by oneself. Pwedeng gawin mong ikaw lang kung wala kang grupo. But when you are in a group, it is better because sabi nga natin, more heads is better than one. So if there are people in the group that know nothing of the conflict, they can help by asking clarifying questions. By being a person, the involved actor can talk to and test on ideas. So kasi may mga pagkakataon naman na yung mga taong kasama mo sa grupo ay hindi naman siguro siya privy sa conflict na yon at wala siyang masyadong information. So ano ang gagawin niya? So hindi pa rin siya walang silbi. May silbi pa rin siya. Ano ang silbi niyan? At ito ay napakahalaga. Yung pwede siyang maging critic doon sa process. Pwede siyang magtanong, di ba? So minsan kasi ang pagtatanong ay nagiging daan din ito para makapag-generate tayo ng mga ideas, opinions at saka mga inputs na kailangan natin sa paggawa ng mga desisyon. Okay. Then the third step is take a large sheet of paper and draw the actors as circles on the paper or on cards that can be pinned on a paper. The size of the circle representing an actor or power. Do not forget to put yourselves as an actor on the page as well. If you or your organization is involved, list third parties as semicircles. Then fourth, draw the lines or symbols below between the circles representing the relationship between the actors. So kailangan kumbaga sa mapa ginawa mo ng bilog-bilog sila doon, naka-layout na sila sa isang papel, then kailangan i-determine natin kung ano ang relationship nila sa isa't isa by drawing lines. So may mga technique din sa pagguhit ng linya para maipakita yung closeness, yung level ng enmity, yung level ng nearness, yung level ng distance o yung level ng transaction nila. Okay. So 5 is in square boxes or at the top of the map, list the main themes. For more details on each actor, use the need sphere mapping tool. And then 6, don't forget to add little date to the conflict map, and if not confidential, also the name of organizations or the person mapping. So take note also of confidentiality when you are working as a mediator. So here is an example of a conflict map. Yan. Ito yung conflict map. Kung gusto nyo, you can also access this. This is available online, and I am showing you the link. So they are the owners of this. They are the owners of this paradigm, and I'm using this only for educational purposes. So makita mo diyan yung mga yung mga different mga different actors in that particular conflict. So this is a basic social network analysis through obviously a few levels of analysis higher than individuals. It is one of those tools in the counterinsurgency manual that can help soldiers gain a better understanding. Okay, so let's go to the GLASL's conflict escalation model. So escalation is an increase in tensions in a conflict. Initially, people in a conflict start by wanting something. After escalation, we not only want something, but we also want to hurt our opponent. So the final level of escalation is mutual destruction. Conflict transformation, understood descriptively, refers to how we create conflict and the energy of a conflict also that changes. So transforms us, and prescriptively, conflict transformation is understood as our effort to de-escalate conflict. So the aim of this system, the aim of this tool is to find out how escalated the conflict is, then to decide how to transform the conflict. And the form and force of conflict intervention in a conflict has to fit the level of escalation of the conflict. So ito ang pinakadahilan bakit kailangan nating malaman bakit kailangan malaman natin ang escalation level, sapagkat dito magdidepende yung anong klaseng intervention ang kailangang i-apply natin sa particular conflict na yan. So here are the step-by-step instruction on how to do this kind of tool. So number 1, analyze the escalation level of the conflict parties in question using the table graph below. Note that the level of escalation of the group may be different from the level of escalation of an individual member of that group. Conflict parties may be at a different level of escalation. And number 2, once the level of escalation is determined, assess if the planned or implemented conflict transformation effort is potentially an adequate form of intervention. So please refer also to the graph. So here is an example of the graph that I was telling you. You have the different step by step. Okay. So like for example, step 1, hardening. Step 2, debate and polemics. Number 3, actions, not words. Image and coalitions, loss of face, etc. etc. So dun sa taas, from number 1 to number 4, ang posibleng outcome nito ay win-win solution. From number 4 to number 6, it can be a win and lose. One is going to win, the other is going to lose. Then lastly, from step number 7 up to the last number 10, this is a lose-lose conflict. So both of the parties may lose and may not benefit from anything. So ito ang escalation model. Magandang pag-aralan to. Okay. So let's go to the next, the Enmedios conflict perspective analysis. So CPA is a method to analyze a conflict in a step-by-step process developed by in medio mediators for micro, interpersonal, and meso-organizational and macro area, CPA focuses on the different perspectives of the involved parties. This helps the conflict parties to broaden their view. Ulterior motives become more visible and seem less threatening, and CPA can be used without professional help. The CPA steps follow the phases of a mediation, and the conflict perspective analysis can be used. Number one, when counseling among colleagues. Number two, as preparation before a mediation. And three, as a coaching tool. So this is the aim of the CPA. One is to separate the facts from interpretations, people from problems, position from interest, needs, and fear. So kailangan ma-separate natin yung facts from interpretations. We have to separate the people from the problems. And then we also have to differentiate positions from interest, needs, and fears. And number two, to enable a change of perspective, to walk in the other person's shoes, to make motivations of all actors plausible. And third, to broaden the perspective. And then to elaborate hypotheses on the new options without taking the ownership of the conflict or solutions of the conflict right away from the involved parties. So here are the steps in the CPA. Okay, the person involved in the conflict describes the situation. What is it all about from their point of view? This should not take more than 10 minutes. For the rest of the time, the person concerned is silent except he or she has something important to add or is asked for an input. Then the effect of this first phase is to inform the outsider, colleagues, and to relieve the person concerned by being actively listened to by the acceptance and recognition of the colleagues. Second is actors. The next step consists of the outsider, colleagues identifying who is involved in the conflict. Analysis is easier with few actors. Focus on the main parties, possible stakeholders, and potential third parties. List them on cards and place them on the floor or stick them on a flip chart. Then, third is facts. What has happened? Who did what? Who said what? These steps should be completely free of interpretations and perception. The aim of phase 3 is to focus on observable facts only, things that could be recorded on video, facts that are not debated by one or the other of the conflict parties. Write its fact or original sound, on a separate card and place it under the relevant actors listed in phase 2. Then 4, background and interests and motivation. What are the motivations behind the facts of phase 3? What are the interests of the actors? Why did they say or do this or that? In this phase, interpretations and hypotheses are sought. Possible interest, wishes, needs, and emotions of the party should be brought forward. The outsider, colleagues, should step into the shoes of the conflict parties and express their interest from their point of view. Begin with the I, conflict party. A, fill sentences which help express needs and wishes, and I would like you to, or it would be important for me to. Also, the concerns, fears, and emotions such as I am afraid, if you do, I feel, are important. Motivations may be contradictory. List all of them. Look from plausible motivations. There are often good motivations for bad behavior. If you find different motivations for party A and B, you can list them separately under the two parties' names. If they are familiar, they can be placed in the middle. The main aim of this phase is to understand each side, to walk in his or her shoes for a few miles, and don't forget that all your work during this phase is hypothetical. Empathy is needed. Number 5 are options. Only when the parties' motivations have become plausible during phase 4 is brainstorming on possible options and next steps suitable. Questions such as which options cover as many interest needs of the participants as possible, or which options get rid of as many fears of the participants as possible are helpful. To broaden the possibilities, the question, how can we implement the conflict parties' interest differently than if we follow what the conflict parties originally demanded? So think of at least two options for each issue. Remember the brainstorming rules. All ideas are good. No corrections, no editing, no comments. Then phase 6 is the place for editing and assessing. Possible concerns about the race options can be thought through. What are the parties' fears concerning possible next steps? Is there a need for optimization of the proposed options? Seven, new discoveries, conclusions. So the process of the CPA is wrap up. The person who is involved in the conflict should give their opinion on whether it was possible for them to gain better insights into the other conflict party's perspective and on the added value of the CPA for them personally. So here is an example of how a CPA can be visualized on cards. Conflict at a fair. So like for example, you have the actors, you have the gym clan, and you have the Boy Scouts. So you have the facts, the interest, motivation, the options, and the reality check. So facts, destroyed Scouts tent. So Boy Scouts put up tents near gym, club, market stand. So interest and motivation, we feel threatened by the presence of Scouts. We would like to be informed about tent. So we do not want a bad reputation in the village because of the fight. So we want the cost of the tent paid. We want to sell our cake at the fair. So options, joint activity to show unity of groups. Share of cost of new tent, insurance space for the tent, official clarification of the misunderstanding. So reality check, insurance will not cover the tent. So this is an example of a CPA card and one way to analyze a particular conflict. So needs fear mapping. So how do we map the needs and the fear of the participants? So the needs fears mapping is an actor-oriented clarification tool. For each actor, the issues, interest, expectations, the needs, the fear, the means, and options are listed in a table. So this enables comparison and quick reference. The table is almost comparable, the same as the CPA tool that I have shown you previously in the previous slides. So it can be used to analyze a conflict by one actor, writing the points for the other actors hypothetically, and second, by a third party to clarify his or her perceptions of the actors hypothetically. And third, during mediation, an abbreviated table can be used, example, with issues and interest, by seeing one's issues and interest written down on a flip chart or a pin board. A conflict party has some assurance that his or her point has been heard. Then four, it can be used as a conflict perspective change exercise when each actor fills in the table for the other actors and they then exchange about self and foreign images. A certain degree of trust and understanding is needed for these last versions to work. Then aim, to clarify in a comparable format various actors' attributes, to leave deadlock positions and focus on needs and fears and possible options to deal with this. Then to help people understand each other's perception and to stimulate discussion. So here is an example of a planned irrigation scheme. So you can try to look into this, and you have the irrigation farmers, the pastoralist, development cooperation agency, the government. So these are the parties to a conflict. Then you have the issues, for the irrigation farmer, the issues are financing of irrigation scheme. For the pastoralist, access to water for their herds. Then for the Development Cooperation Agency, implementation of project in a do no harm manner. Then for the government, the issue is economic growth without social unrest. So what are the interests and needs of the parties? So you can see that here in the third column, it is shown the different interests and needs. You have the irrigation farmers. For them, it is more. They are more interested in income generation. The pastoralists are more interested in livelihood and survival. Then the Development Cooperation Agency, they wish to fulfill mandates, income, and status at home. And then the government is more interested in re-election popularity. So you also have the fears, the means, and the options. So this is an example of an aim, how you write the fears and needs identification for each of the parties. Then step-by-step instruction, draw a table with the following columns: issues, interest, needs, fears, and options. So a conflict party, a third party fills the table in as conflict analysis tool, just like in what I have shown you in the table previously. So on and so forth. So these are the step by step. So in this lecture, I have demonstrated to you the use of the conflict analysis tool. And I expect that you'll be able to apply this in your analysis of the case study that I have assigned for you to do. So thank you very much and have a nice day.